So I was browsing Netflix, as you do, looking for some stuff to watch. Not that I don't already have enough to watch, but no harm in checking. And on my recommended section appears BeyBlade Burst. And you know what? I was like, okay, fine, I'll give it a shot. Now, a little bit of preemptive ramble first. I don't know anything about Beyblade. I grew up with Beyblade. I was like the perfect age to kind of be a kid when Beyblade really kind of hit its peak. And like my school was full of like kids collecting Beyblades and stuff. And I had some too. And I remember like one of my birthday presents was like this really expensive, like big die cast, I think, one of like this white unicorn or something. I don't know. But it was like a really cool toy. But I don't remember anything about the show. I remember the toys being great. And I don't remember anything about the show, even though I know for a fact I used to religiously watch the show alongside, well, all the other shows I watched as a kid. Out of all the shows I watched as a kid, I would say Beyblade was the one I remember the least about, especially out of the ones I was really into as a kid, Like, I remembered everything about Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, I remembered everything about Sonic X, I remembered everything about the Power Rangers series as I watched. I don't remember anything about Beyblade, and I've always intended on getting back into it. Mainly with the original, but, newer series on Netflix, so let's do it, let's watch the first few episodes of BeyBlade Burst. I did a little bit of research. I didn't do much. But I watched the first 3 episodes, and let's talk about those first 3 episodes, BeyBlade Blurst, BeyBlade Burst is the worst title ever because you just can't pronounce it at all. And it has a sequel series Evolution, and that has a sequel series Turbo. So it's got its own kind of connected storyline, I guess. I'd imagine this is the equivalent to Carbide Vanguard G, having stuff like Stridegate and Next and Z. So Burst is its own generation that has series within it, and then there's other generations like the original one and the others that I don't know the names of. So that all sounds all fair and good. So basically meaning you can start here, which is good because this is where I started. Not as a kid, of course, but like I said, I don't remember anything from being a kid. I watched it because it was on Netflix, and then right after watching the first 3 episodes, I was doing research and stuff, and found out that it's aired on basically everything ever. It's not only on Netflix, but it's on like every TV station ever, apparently, according to Wikipedia. But also it's on YouTube, like Carbide Vanguard, and I wonder if it took inspiration from Carbide Vanguard in that regard, or if it's something the other way around. Again, these card game advert series can get away with being on YouTube because, well, they're adverts. So the show itself doesn't actually have to make money as long as it does the advertising job well. Anyway, now that we've kind of got that out of the way, this is a very kind of like impromptu video, by the way. I have no plans for this. I watched the first 3 episodes of BeyBlade Burst. I'm never going to be able to pronounce that. And it's okay. I was really hoping this would be another Scan to Go or something, where this would be like an absolute hidden gem. And maybe 3 episodes isn't enough to talk about, but people always talk about like the 3 episode test when it comes to animes and stuff. And I wanted to kind of get this video out. So 3 episode test it is. So basically everything I talk about will be about the first 3 episodes. It might not apply to episode 4 onwards. I don't know. Haven't seen them. And yes, I will be watching more out of curiosity. I don't know how much more though. But yeah, the first 3 episodes were okay. The biggest problem is that it doesn't really do anything too interesting or surprising. As someone who has seen a bunch of other, card game anime and toy advert anime in my time, I've seen a bunch of them. I've seen Yu-Gi-Oh! I've seen Vanguard. I've seen Pokemon. I've seen fucking Bakugan. Yeah, I remember watching Bakugan. I've seen a bunch of them. BeyBlade Burst doesn't do anything that those others haven't done, It's got your generic, overly confident main character who always boasts about how cool he is and everything, but in actuality, it turns out he's never won a game before. It has a tournament within the first episode. It has the rival character. It doesn't do anything out of the ordinary. That would be fine if it was gonna add some kind of like twist or unique thing to it to make it like extra compelling, but it doesn't. At least not yet. And that's the biggest problem. So to answer the question, is it worth watching? I can't recommend it personally. Not over a bunch of the other shows. Like, if you're looking for a card game anime to watch, there's Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, there's Cardfight Vanguard, the original. Hell, there's Yu-Gi-Oh! Any of the Yu-Gi-Ohs, basically. If there's any of the Yu-Gi-Ohs you haven't seen, you may as well watch that. This one doesn't do anything too out of the ordinary. Hell, if you want a more direct recommendation, something that's a lot more similar to something like this, that I think goes the extra mile, is Scan2Go. Scan2Go is a show that I've name dropped a couple times on the channel. It's really good. That's all I'm going to say about it for now. I'm absolutely planning on making a video about Scan2Go in the future. Scan2Go isn't a card game anime. In fact, it's something very close to BeyBlade in the fact that it's more kind of a plastic toy sort of thing rather than actual trading cards. But I think Scan2Go starts off kind of rough, of course, but it does add some interesting tweaks, and it's very different to a lot of the competition. BeyBlade Blurst isn't really. I will say, full credit, the visuals are outstanding for this kind of thing. Like, oh my god, this anime looks fantastic visually. It looks so good. Mainly the character designs. The character designs look really nice. The best ones being the main character Bolt, but then also the rival character Shu. He looks great too. Like, a bunch of these characters look great. And the visuals are mainly the only real thing I enjoyed from these 3 episodes. The rest is very, very basic. And the animation, I was like, okay, who animated it then? It's OLM. The animation studio that did everything I've ever watched, apparently, because, yeah, I wasn't expecting them to have done this. And it would also explain why this anime looks so good, like the studio that did Pokemon Sun and Moon, the people that did this, yeah, no. I mean, Pokemon Sun and Moon is still their best anime visually, I would say. But then again, Pokemon BeyBlade, of course, one's going to have more budget than the other. And yeah, for BeyBlade, this looks fucking great. The actual bays is what they're called. I assumed they were called Beyblades, but the characters in the show refer to them as bays, which sounds weird. I imagine it's some kind of Japanese translation thing. The bays are CGI, but that's fine, actually. I think in terms of how to use CGI in an anime, bays fit the bill about as well as you possibly could. They spin, and spinning is one of the most difficult things to accurately 2D animate. They're also fairly, solid, they're an inanimate object, and inanimate objects tend to look better in CGI, not to mention all the magic effects and stuff over them. The kind of CGI they use is very reminiscent to the CGI in Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, and that's a really big compliment. So the CGI I have no problems with. Again, visually this anime is great. The soundtrack's fairly solid. The opening themes, I say themes plural because the English version has a different one. The Japanese opening it's nothing special. It's a Japanese opening for a toy advert. It's okay. English opening is really fucking good though. I don't know why. This is probably just my bias. For some reason, I'm the only person on the planet that actually doesn't mind English versions of opening themes. And this English opening theme is a completely different song and everything. But it's really good. Genuinely. It's up there with, the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's opening and the Futawa Precure opening in terms of best, English openings. It's really good. And that's honestly the biggest surprise so far. But again, the story is nothing, and it feels so shallow is my biggest problem with it. There's no depth and no world building and no establishment, and maybe that would be fine because, this isn't exactly the first installment in the franchise. Maybe the first installment is more world building focused. But this is supposed to be an entry point for new kids. You can't expect kids to go back and watch the fucking series from the late 90s / early 2000s, can you? And that's why, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon and so on and so forth always has these, different generations, because then you have easier jumping in points for kids. This generation, at least, doesn't seem to be good at establishing itself, because it just kind of gets you right in. Within the first episode, we've already started a tournament. And sure, Scan2Go did the same thing, but Scan2Go uses the tournament in the first episode thing really cleverly, because it's like, oh, tournament and everything. It's like, oh, weird. That's a weird way of starting. And basically, it starts the entire show with their protagonist losing the tournament and being a complete idiot. And then in the second episode, we actually go back to establish the character some more and everything. And I really liked that. I liked the bait and switch, because you assume that the main character is gonna fucking do well in the tournament, because obviously. But he loses his very first fight in the tournament, and I like that. This does the opposite. BeyBlade Blurst falls into the exact tropes that Scantigo tried to subvert. We have the tournament in the first episode. We have our main character, Volt, win the first thing in the tournament. And guess what? Even though it's a tournament, which I assume would be filled with a lot of competent people, it's his very first ever win. The way they try to portray the strategy of the game is very interesting to me, because it's BeyBlade. I didn't know how in-depth or how strategic it could get, and it doesn't really have much strategy. And I imagine a lot of it, most of it, if not all of it, is exaggerated for the sake of that being an anime. I doubt the real game has this much strategy. Who knows though? But they do get into some technical details. They do go, oh no, he's like tilting the launcher wrong when he like pulls the thing, and oh no, he's doing it at this speed and everything. And it's like, okay, so there's something to it. It's not just random. Because back in the day as a kid, I remember very clearly it was the kid that had the most expensive one that won. Whereas with this, it's like, okay, no, there is strategy, and there's like different types of bays. There's like attack ones, or defense ones, and so on. And it's like, okay, no, this is actually, they might be doing something like with this. It felt very much like Scan to Go, and it's definitely more like spectacle kind of focused, like Scan to Go was, rather than outright strategy like someone like Carbide Vanguard focused on. But, there was something there. Maybe they could, go more in depth on that in future episodes. Maybe not. I don't know. If this new series has some kind of gimmick towards like the Beyblades themselves, I didn't notice it. Because, usually like each series has some kind of, like you got the Mega Revolutions and the Alolan Z moves and everything. BeyBlade Burst, I didn't notice anything like that for BeyBlade Blurst. BeyBlade Burst, but then again, like I said, I'm a complete newcomer, so I don't know. There's no breathing room in this show. It very much goes from story beat to story beat, and that's not me just saying, oh, the entire episodes, like there's too much focus on the Beyblades themselves and not enough character development. Not necessarily, because they very much in episode 2 have this whole, oh, he won once, so now he's really overconfident. Oh no, we're going to teach him how to be a bit more humble. And that sounds like a good idea, but it just feels so stilted and badly written and very kind of convenient. And they use that for the sake of a twist by having it be, oh no, the person that actually taught him to be humble is now the guy that he's going to be fighting in episode 2. That's really neat. But it just kind of feels pointless, because it's like, well, he's your opponent. I don't know. There's just no sense of scale to this anime, I guess. I don't know how to really word that, but basically this main character, Bolt, who has never won or really played much before in his life, we get introduced to him after he's already got a Beyblade, after he's already started getting into it, yet he still hasn't won yet. Like, they could have easily pulled a Carbide Vanguard and just had the first episode be him getting into the game. That would have been a much more solid start. But instead, he's into the game, but has never ever won and can barely play. And yet he still constantly has an audience following him around of like these characters, I guess his classmates, but they always like following him around and like watching him play the game and everything. And it's like, why? He's a newcomer. Surely it should be the rival character, Shu, that has the following instead, right? But no, Shu has to be the loner type, and so he's not allowed to have an audience. And it's weird, because then when we go to the tournament, like in the second, third episode, even though he's only won once, ever, he's crowned the Dark Horse, and the audience goes fucking crazy over him. It very much feels like the entire world of the anime revolves around Volt. And there's no, like, it's not a living, breathing world by any means. Like, it feels like the world of the anime is like fucking cardboard cutouts around him, you know? Like, it doesn't feel like a world. Like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal's first episode, especially, introduces, like, this world that just Yuma is in. And it works. Like when Yuma is like looking at all the other duelists and stuff in the first episode, you can see like so many other people having fun and stuff. And that's really cool. It builds like a sense of scale and a community. And even though you never see most of these characters again, it's still really cool. And it still really kind of does a good job of building the world up. Whereas with this, it's very much just, here's a school, here's a single teacher, here is a couple of classmates, and here's the main character. That's all you get. Like, there's a very like low amount of like environments and stuff in this, and the pacing is all off. It's very kind of fast, and there's like no breathing room, and just like every scene has to like do something, you know, and it feels very stilted. It's like, this is the scene where Volt does this. This is the scene where Volt, and it feels very by the numbers. And you could argue, oh, I'm looking too into it, you know, it's a kid's anime, but after watching Future Card Buddy Fight Ace this year, I don't think I can ever go back to that mentality again. Because Future Card Buddy Fight Ace is very much aimed at a similar audience to BeyBlade Blurst. And it's just better in every way. It just is. It builds a world more effectively. It's aimed at the same basic audience. It has very similar visuals. It's also OLM. But it just does such a better job of actually introducing the characters and getting you to care about them. Because that's another thing. I was actively rooting against Volt at a point because he's just like too overconfident, which I get it. It's the protagonist trope. But usually there's like a little bit of humility to him, which again, I get is the point of episode 2. He's supposed to learn humility. But he doesn't really. You know, like it doesn't feel like each action actually has consequences and effects. It's very on the nose, and it's like the show's talking down to its audience. And again, normally for a kid's show, I used to be like, oh, you know, that's fine. But again, ever since Future Card Buddy Fight Ace has done the same thing with subtlety and executed it amazingly well, I don't know if I can really give BeyBlade Blurst a free pass here. So yeah, that's my overall thoughts on the first 3 episodes of BeyBlade Blurst. And it's okay. I can't recommend it though, just because there are so many similar shows that are so much better right off the gate, you know? Even if BeyBlade Blurst gets much better starting from episode 4 onwards, Future Card Buddy Fight Ace is great from episode 1. Scan to Go does some really interesting stuff with the formula that no other show does. And BeyBlade Blurst doesn't really do anything effective. Now, there's one thing it does effectively, actually. And it's not the visuals or anything. This is supposed to be a toy advert, and god damn it, after watching this, I wanted to buy some Beyblades. They look so cool. It's a really effective toy advert, and they look really cool. They look like the kind of thing I'd play with for 2 seconds and then never play with again, but I want to own them, so it's done its job. And I guess you could argue that if it's done its job, then there's no point in complaining, but I would like to see them improve, and maybe the other series are better. They probably are. I don't know. There can't be any worse than Bay Wheels. Oh, Bay Wheels is a story for another time, but Bay Wheels might actually be one of the worst anime I've ever seen in my entire life. Oh boy, that's a bad one. But overall, yeah, I can't recommend it. Watch basically anything else for now. I will keep watching to see if it does get any better, but for now, I kind of, I watched the first 3 episodes, and I was already kind of bored by the end of the 3rd one. It does nothing original. It does nothing new. It follows every trope by the book. If you've ever seen any card game or toy advert anime, you've seen this one. And even if this is your first one, there's still much better first ones to watch, you know? Even as someone who isn't familiar with these tropes, which you are, don't lie. If you're watching this video, you're familiar with the exact tropes I'm talking about. But yeah, that's BeyBlade Blurst, and god damn it, can they name the next series literally anything else?